Hello and welcome back to an episode of Generation Films. My name is American Ben. Today, we're going to issue a defense of Homelander. You know, the central antagonist in the hit Amazon series, The Boys. Now, calm down. This isn't going to be blonde on blonde tribalism, and I promise you as well, this video and the argument therein is not going to be some sort of Homelander is the true hero type of nonsense. It would be disingenuous of me to stand here in my closet espousing that the whole time I was watching The Boys, I kept thinking to myself, gosh, Homelander, what a great guy. No, most of the time I was repulsed by his actions, but he also did some things that hinted at a more complicated psyche and philosophy than his rash actions and cold-hearted facade belie. Things that make me wonder, if not at all conclude, that he's somewhat misunderstood, at least in terms of his moral character. Thus, today I want to attempt to see the world from Homelander's point of view. Well, not X-ray vision, but his perspective. After all, he is a pretty good dad. He seems to sincerely love his son Ryan, and I mean, come on. Whose father hasn't pushed them off a roof or two and then told them to stop whining, get up, and walk it off? I know my dad did, and hey, I turned out just fine except for a few ticks and a slight penchant for kidnapping. But I digress. If you haven't seen the show yet, well, it takes place in a perversely capitalistic world rich with celebrity superheroes known as supes, who just kind of suck as people. They lie, cheat, murder, and steal, all for fame, fortune, and power. The story of the show follows a ragtag team of spurned misfits known as the Boys, who attempt to take down the most famous superhero team in the world, a squad called the Seven, a group of elite supes led by the narcissistic and megalomaniacal test tube super supe known as Homelander. Homelander is part of the last batch of mid-20th century men born between the truly tough war-racked gentlemen of the silent generation and the new school feelings-first children of the millennium. His type is a concoction steeped in pride, but lacking the ingredient for self-awareness. He's conditioned to expect to get his way, and he'll throw a tantrum when he doesn't. He uses the word snowflake to describe modern-day youth, and yet he needs to be doted on with overbearing affection. He's easily triggered and would hate to know it. Homelander is also the product of an educational system that's infused its curriculum with jingoistic nationalism, and as such, he idealizes American freedom, military might, and capitalism while entirely overlooking where the country has fallen short of its own principles. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, he'd say, all the while never having worked a real job in his life. He is kind of a patriot, though. Just as well, he is himself a personified caricature of American innovation and progress. He's a powerful, individualistic, ambitious product of unrestrained military science who bends morality to meet his will. However, his psyche and the behavior it entails is also the product of some much more sophisticated thinking and conditioning as well. And in order to understand him on a deeper level, we'll have to get to know the man behind the red, blue, and gold spandex and from whence he came. Okay, now before you tune out declaring me to be a cuck and expecting I'm about to proffer up some banal argument a la Homelander's lonely, torturous childhood is at fault for his psychopathic, violent tendencies, and thus we should offer him our sympathies rather than our abhorrence. Let me just say, that's not the crux of my spiel today, so hold back your salvo of pejoratives. My mom levies enough of them at me. That said, we should at least give some voice to the point about his childhood. Not that such an experience justifies his actions, but it does help to inform us as to how he perceives his fellow human beings. His childhood did legitimately suck. He was not only concocted in a lab, but as well, he was sort of raised in one. Rather than the loving affections of a mother and father, he was the subject of twisted experiments put through grueling physical and mental tests in preparation for his future as the savior of mankind. You'd think that he'd have some hesitation before getting on board with Nazis, but hey, we all have our minor slip-ups. Actually, Homelander supposedly killed his mother, though accidentally. I'd reckon this is a tragedy liable to take a significant psychological toll on any child, let alone one already privy to a plethora of emotionally damaging dynamics. Thus, on the most basic level, it's easy to understand, 1, why Homelander isn't exactly fond of non-soup human beings, and 2, why he isn't the most compassionate person himself. It also seems rather reasonable that he wouldn't want a human to be the primary influence in his son's life. But blah blah blah, we obviously should not organize society around a wholly deterministic conception of the universe. When a man commits acts of evil, he should be judged harshly for them, for the sake of the good. If our defense of Homelander was predicated on the experience of his childhood, we would then extrapolate such abuse to be the primary factor in inflating his ego to unprecedented levels. Homelander has a lot of demons. His mind just can't be right given everything he's been through. He is at least fundamentally human after all. Thus, his ego becomes his shield. Confronting his various pathologies, rife insecurities, and heavily traumatic experiences would be too much to bear, and so he sheathes such sad songs away in favor of consoling himself with much sweeter refrains, those ringing of his utter greatness. He isn't maladapted to society because of any sort of personal frailty. Oh no, he's an outcast because he's just so much more special than everyone else. His uniquely acute state of mental torment is actually a state of perfection. The nefarious actors around him, as I'm sure they've always done even when he was a child, constantly tell him he's a failed experiment.
I'm the world's greatest superhero. You're my greatest failure.
The world will recognize you for the pitiful disappointment you are. You are not worthy of my respect. You are not a god. You are simply bad product.
That's the type of disparagement that makes for rampant insecurity in the adolescent mind. And so what can Homelander do? Well, he can protect himself by brushing aside the objections of his malefactors, scoff, and self-assuredly profess to be without flaw.
You should have been raised in a home with a family who loved you, not in a cold lab with doctors.
And yet, I turned out great.
Okay, again, the whole getting swept up in a Nazi movement thing, not the best optics. But hey, again, we've all done crazy things for love. Aww. And plus, Homelander never truly adopts a Nazi worldview. He mostly just believes the master race is him. Not white blonde Europeans in general, but him. Just him alone, and I don't know, I suppose there's something redeeming in that vis-a-vis the alternative, but yeah, I know, low bar. As you can pretty much confirm by now, I'm not here to rehabilitate Homelander's image by eliciting your sympathies for his childhood trauma, and being that I'm not here to waste your time, well, I suppose I am here to waste your time actually. This is YouTube, and there's no getting around that. But whatever, you're here, and so I prefer to now broach a more intricate defense of Homelander's character, one that speaks less to a reductive good-evil binary, and more to utility and perception. Ooh, utility. As for perception, Homelander may have an antipathy for humankind because its members turned him into a lab rat, but ultimately he looks down upon humans and dispassionately watches them crash and burn because, well, he's not quite human himself. He demeans humanity as a weak and helpless species, and in a world rife with superpowered bipedal beings, they kind of are. Now, yes, Homelander is a killer. Again, we've all done crazy things for love. I mean, he rather unflinchingly puts down children, teens, women, and whatever else ain't him, because to him, such beings are like ants, worms, deer. Humans don't weep for the aforementioned forms of life because they're intellectually and physically inferior to us. I'll let you weigh which of those two measures of strength are most at work in inspiring our disconnect with and callousness towards non-human creatures. I know, you personally, Peter, love the animals in the zoo, I know. But let's be real, if a truck full of porcine beasts were to flip over on the highway and bake its bacon into street meat, you ain't gonna lose much sleep over the event, whether the pigs that perished were porky elders or newborn babes. I think Homelander sort of views humanity in this way, as an inferior species, and thus he has a hard time understanding and empathizing with human beings. You may argue that he's actually only of human intelligence himself, and thus his brain power shouldn't inhibit his ability to connect with humans. And yet, I'm not so sure that's true. Okay, he's a pompous prick, but it does appear that no one among the humans in the show, or the Supes for that matter, is able to think as fast as he can, or outwit him, or trick him, or even withhold from him the slightest secret.
It'll work.
What'll work?
My Vought Sonic speaker setup. I'm sorry, how did you get in?
I have a key.
Though he can see through walls, I suppose that helps. I do wonder if aliens were to show up on Earth, and it turns out they could communicate with humans, but are yet still totally different, even more capable than us, would they still be able to empathize with us or emotionally bond with us? And please, no comments about Twi'leks, you sick fuck Star Wars geeks out there. Love you. As for the answer to my question, well, it's hard to say, being that humans have never experienced such a dynamic. Every other species we've interacted with thus far, save for Elon Musk, has been of significantly lesser intelligence than us and almost entirely unable to communicate with us. My dog and I understand each other. We speak the same language. Shut the f*** up. Anyway, the point is, we can think of Homelander as an alien. And to compound upon his disconnect from humanity, he wasn't exactly nurtured in a way that would humanize him. So yeah, he does sick and abhorrent things to people, and I think he does so because he sort of views humans as a bunch of lowly animals and can't understand their pain and plight. However, in playing Homelander apologist, not that I want to or anything, there's another lens through which we must examine his superior intelligence, and this angle towards his exoneration is far more disturbing. That is, what if he's right? Or that's too vague. Better stated, what if he's so intelligent that he can better understand utility? Or more broadly, what if he can understand something that we humans do not? What if he is Plato writing the Republic? What if he is whoever invented peanut butter and jelly sandwiches inventing peanut butter and jelly sandwiches? Now, okay, Homelander does kill heroes as well, but for the most part, only ones who hurt him. Only the ones who contributed to the lies he was fed growing up, and only the ones who try to hinder his plans. And he believes his plans have a higher good and are thus essential to carry out. Does Homelander simply have a deeper understanding of human psychology and human society than we do? Does he simply know what it takes to dominate men? Does Homelander only abuse his peers, for instance, because he knows that is how one maintains dominance, especially over other powerful beings who threaten him? Or is Homelander's philosophy flawed? Well, throughout the show, he becomes more and more powerful. He rises. He manipulates the public, and when he kills his colleagues, he gets them out of his way. He's almost like that psycho killer who kills because he understands some deeper truth about reality us normal humans don't. Hear me out. What if it scares us? What if it simply scares us that Homelander understands the world for what it is? A game of survival of the fittest. And he's looking to win that game. We're conditioned to make such egregiously reflexive assumptions about overtly malicious characters like Homelander that we don't even muster up the slightest impulse to think deeply about the utility of his actions. He unilaterally inflicts violence on others, kills people, ruins the lives of many individuals, and thus we assume he is a net negative for the world. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to simply roll my eyes at the conventional thinking we're adapted to engage in. Usually convention exists for a reason. However, we tend as humans to reduce all beings along the good-evil binary I mentioned earlier, and in no case is this more true than with fictional characters, specifically when it comes to heroes and how we devise them. Superman is an ideal heroic being. He's caring, compassionate, humble, and yet simultaneously a valiant warrior who stands up for the weak and helpless amidst battles boasting cosmic implications. He's also super boring, has no personality, and I would way rather have dinner with Homelander, but I digress. We just appoint this ideal, this Superman ideal, as the expectation for what superheroes should be like. The problem, I would argue, is that in doing so, we neglect to ask important questions about the good and the various ingredients needed to direct society towards it. We seem to have convinced ourselves that virtue is the prime ingredient for heroism. But is this true in reality? Or could it be perhaps that ambition or narcissism is the actual prime modus required to compel heroic action? What if superheroism is best wrought by the inflation of man's ego, a la the crowd cheering on the gladiator or the professional athlete as he rises to the occasion on the coattails of adrenaline and a quick shot of grandiosity? Or in our case specifically, why is Homelander able to live the life that he does? One which involves him going out and saving the world day after day after day. Is it some intrinsic need to do good that drives him, or a lust for affection? Is it because he has a natural compassion for humans, or is it because he believes he is a god and desires to be worshipped as one? More directly, could there even be a superhero? A great warrior who's absent egomaniacal traits, who spurns adulation but covets the opportunity to risk his life for the sake of others. Well, I don't know, maybe it is possible that someone of this ilk I'm describing can exist. But I think it's more likely that in order to cultivate a strong society, a society that's well guarded, all different sorts of people are needed, including those with the capacity to fight, to kill, to destroy, and yet still sleep easy at night. Resting the world's fate on an exceptional few beings who can bridge the divide between contradictory traits is not a sustainable path forward for humanity. I'm not sure American sniper Chris Kyle was the most deeply empathetic person on planet Earth, but he was capable of doing a job those with softer hearts cannot. Likewise, I'm not so sure a more compassionate person would be able to better serve as a warrior for humankind than Homelander. In reality, a more socially adjusted and conscientious hero would experience acute emotional disturbance after having to abandon a mid-air flight to its doom, and thus such a hero would struggle to meet the demands of his job day after day. Homelander, on the other hand, can rather easily rebound after witnessing or even causing the deaths of innocent people, and this probably makes him particularly well suited for his position. He's reliable and won't crack due to the heavily traumatic nature of his duties. Of course, Homelander is a caricature of the modern American populist celebrity, the uber patriot who exploits the fears of heartland Americans for his own benefit. And because he's exaggerated for effect, it may seem silly to argue that his most malevolent actions are justified given his overall value add to society. He does massacre a lot of people, after all. Again, though, we all do crazy things for love. However, the basic principle of my argument holds water. A strong, well-defended society cannot be built on the backs of only nice people, for there's dirty work to be done. We cannot have the benefits Homelander provides without accepting his undesirable behaviors as well. Perhaps even the reason audiences may be liable to deem Homelander a net negative for society is that for the bulk of the duration of The Boys, he doesn't have a foe of equal standing to match up against. Thus, he's relegated to rather mundane, save-the-day, rescue-the-cat-in-the-tree type tasks, and such endeavors are in fact probably not worth the price of the damage he causes. However, when Soldier Boy shows up, it's not so clear that we don't want Homelander around. And it's in this moment that we realize his integral role in protecting humanity. If a supervillain comes about on Earth, Homelander is our only hope. Well, maybe Elon Musk will send a remote control submarine or something, but not sure how helpful that's going to be. At one point, Homelander does himself create supervillains by distributing Compound V among international black markets, and this does beg a greater question. That is, does every action have an equal and opposite reaction? Does every force have an opposite? Does the existence of a superhero imply the existence of a supervillain such that the universe remains balanced, and it's thus impossible for a super being to be a net positive in the scope of all reality? Alas, I digress. This is a question for another video. The simple, important point for now is that while Homelander does send Compound V-infused psychos running amok o'er the Earth, none seem to be as strong as he is, and so while some deaths will be caused by his action, humanity at large is not put in peril as a result of his subterfuge. 'Tis simply the price we pay to have a Homelander. Think about it this way. Would you get rid of Homelander if you could? As in, if you could press a button and Homelander would evaporate, would you press it? What if some evil alien force invades the Earth with intentions to conquer and enslave humanity? Up until that rather far-fetched moment, sorry Joe Rogan, perhaps you'd be quick to smash that button. But if it did happen, we'd be desperate to have Homelander on our side, and most likely entirely willing to put up with his abuse in order to survive as a species. Homelander is, I suppose, a sort of last resort weapon that unfortunately you can't just deactivate until the time of need. Although, such was done in Soldier Boy's case and is an option, though I wouldn't suggest pissing Homelander off by trying to snooze button him. Anyway, what do you think? Is the world better off having Homelander around, or have we no need for such a superhero? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do give it a big thumbs up. If you didn't, whatever. Remember to subscribe to this channel and hit that damn notification bell so you don't miss a damn thing. For now, my name is American Ben, and I'll catch you next time. Generation Films, peace.